When you're working with agriculture and nature, you don't have a lot of time to screw around. So I'm showing you these things in such a way to help you understand that there's a balance between carbon free or fossil fuel free and using whatever you've got. That's why we did the demonstration with permanent raised beds, and now we're terracing. So there's something for everybody on this channel who is serious about having a self-sustaining homestead, a property that produces food for their friends and family, or even a farm business. I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead. So what I've done now is I use the shovel to rake this out, or kind of get this level enough that we can get a riding lawnmower out here. One of the advantages of having a level terrace, again, is that you don't need any special equipment. You can see this tractor doesn't have any good hardy wheels. Now when it's got a load in it, I can get stuck on a hill, but you'll never get stuck on level ground. We're going to spread the manures and materials out starting upslope. Now, I just said this is a level terrace. Why are we starting upslope? Well, just because it's level doesn't mean that it doesn't have some residual hydraulic cycle, meaning underneath could still have a gradient that is a slope. So when water slows and spreads on this terrace, we want our nutrients to spread out, but gravity is going to have it growing, taking the nutrients from the top terraces, slowly moving that down to the bottom of the hill. That's why you always work from the top of the hill to the bottom when you're applying nutrients. But when you're doing earthworks, you work from the bottom to the top. Because again, the earthworks is about slowing and spreading the water, not impounding it, but allowing the nutrients to evenly distribute over the largest growing area that you can achieve. So I've got ash and charcoal that came out of a furnace, and I'm spreading it everywhere. Does it have to be all nice and neat? No, I'm just slinging it everywhere. But I'm starting at the top. Now, a level terrace isn't actually level. It has a slight slope back into the terrace in order for water to pool at the highest ground level. Depending on your soil type, that means that the water will sponge through the rest of the ground, but there won't be any water pressure on the berm or the lower terraced area. And we can talk about why in another case, but if you throw all your nutrients around the top areas and you run out of nutrients, that's fine. You don't have any on the bottom, that's fine. As long as you get a cover crop going, you'll have security there. But the nutrients will soak and spread in the upper boundaries of your terraced area, allowing you to start your organic crops or your other types of food crops while not disturbing the lower areas that you're just simply going to rake out and put cover on. And because, like I talked about in the last thing, we took the soil from down here and we throw it uphill. So pretty much if there's a center line on your terrace, any excavation that happens above the center line goes upslope, and it goes into building this berm a little bit higher so that over time the slope of your terrace is back about 4% or 4 degrees, not to channel water or to hold water, but essentially to prevent water from pooling and going over the outer edge of your terrace. So whether you're in Tanzania, you're in China, you're in Uganda, you're in any temperate climate, you will have heavy rains, and actually desert climates as well, but you use rocks instead of soil. But in a temperate climate, we're going to use this clay soil. We're going to throw those materials back upslope, giving us kind of more security on that hill and slope. Throwing the materials uphill, let some of the materials roll downhill, but we're also feeding the slope. So we're going to get grass growing on there. We're going to get all of our vegetative strip, all of our biomass growing on that slope, while fertilizing the downslope, because when it rains, nutrients from the upper slopes will soak and spread and come through the soil to the downslopes. So our berms, our vegetative strips, or bunds, are going to get fertilized indirectly, but have the least amount of disturbance. Our flat terrace areas are going to get fertilized directly using animal manures, fireplace ash, charcoal, anything that might have come from heating. So we don't want a first burn. We don't want something that we burn just to get the ash. We want that to burn and be cooking on top of it, or you want it to burn and heating a house. Then those ashes would then come out onto the soil to kind of sweeten it up a little bit. We're just spreading everything out, raking it all out, not really worried about, we're not drop spreading it because we don't need an even application. Because when the season comes back, and whether it's had cover crops on it, whether it's had just straw on it, we can use a tiller or we can turn beds over in this main area. Now remember, there's that center line on the terrace that is going to tell us that we can do root crops in depth upslope. That upslope is also going to be a little bit more moist. And we can do in the center band, so there's a center band as we move to the outer edge, you can kind of have your bulk crops. And then next to the top of this this mound, and I'll walk over here real quick, you'll have an exclusion area that'll just be biomass. So you can see I'm a little bit above here. I would basically have, as wide as that riding lawnmower, some kind of grass or biomass that would get mowed out. Now we're going to mow at the top below that, the bund, so that we have a nice clean access walkway. And we're going to have a mowing here to make it nice and clean and access way. But on the slope, we might have grass that grows, 4 or 5 feet tall. It's not a big deal. We'll just sickle that once a year, 4 times a year, and use it as mulch. But inside of this large terrace, we may go through and rake it into permanent raised beds. We might mound in manures or compost or other materials to build beds. We now have a blank canvas to work with. Now, over the years, we're going to use less and less fossil fuel. So with the excavator, it takes a lot of fossil fuel and gets the initial build straight. Then we have our riding mowers or your side-by-side or your tractor bringing in materials. But over time, we'll eventually just bring a wheelbarrow of material in, or we'll bring a small wagon of material in, throw it around on the surface as we idle out one of these paddocks each season. So that's part of our management strategy. Now, as I'm coming in here with the little lawn tractor, I am noticing areas up here that need to be raked out in that center access strip. I don't know if you guys have seen that, but there's a center access strip here that takes us to all the paddocks, kind of like a ramp here. And then as these paddocks get cultivated, we're not getting anywhere near the outside edges. Again, we're only cultivating the center. You'll find more like this design where the outside edge is kind of raised up and then the beds are sunken, which allows us again to soak and spread the water over the entire bed area. But again, there's a nutrient cycle that you need to be aware of, and water will carry nutrients, and we want the water to soak and spread to maximize our nutrients. But then the nutrients that soak into the ground, we know that they're going to come from upslope to downslope, and so we don't want to be putting a lot of nutrients at the bottom of the hill, because as it moves downslope, it'll be outside of our growing spaces. So this particular area here is going to receive a lot of manure. It's going to receive a lot of ash, and I think this is the last bit of ash, though. There's not a whole lot of that. And then everything's going to get limed. But I'm not as concerned about manures and things down on the bottom unless that's the idle field. Because again, we only put the manures on the idle fields, and the other fields get green manures in the form of cover crops. So again, if this is not second nature to you, that's okay. I understand that. Ask your questions below. This field in front of me only got a rotary tiller to kind of break out the big lumps. The field above it got a regular tiller to kind of smooth it out, and this one got a regular tiller, and this field got no tillage at all. I will keep you up to date on what we're doing here. I'll show you the progression. I'll show you how it grows for the sole purpose of you being able to do this yourself on your land. Imagine this is a 2-acre enclosure. We were able to double the amount of growable space just by simply terracing the area, maybe even tripling the amount. Plus, we're going to have better access with the equipment that we have, so you don't need to go out and buy any equipment. And we'll still have large garden spaces to grow different types of things. Now, this happens to be very well suited for a good solar aspect. You may not have as good of a solar aspect, and so these terraces also create microclimates. So I don't want to oversell the earthwork. If you do it wrong, it will be a huge pain in the ass, and it will cause a lot of problems. But if you do it right, it's going to increase your growing space, give you the same amount of biomass if you're growing with vegetative strips, It's going to give you better access, meaning these level areas will allow you to get equipment in and out, or even a small cart or wheelbarrow. And overall, you will grow more abundant. Please join us on this journey by liking or subscribing to this channel. Actually, subscribe to the channel. You don't just need to like it, you need to subscribe. And ask your questions below. I want this to be interactive. I'm doing a lot of these videos in between actual work, so I don't put a lot of effort into the longevity or the length of the video. I essentially want to make sure you understand key concepts that are going to provide nutrients, security, and shelter on your property, as well as good quality organic food with minimal inputs. We're going to have quite a garden here, and I want to make sure that you learn from what we have here and you're a part of this education. If you want to take classes or be a part of this, because I wouldn't even do a video if there are 10 or 15 people out here. We would just shovel this out manually. We would get all this thing laid out flat and all the nutrients over here. I probably got another 3 cubic yards of manure that can come out. But again, we haven't really pushed people coming out because we know you've got land of your own, and the more time you can spend working on your land, the better. So again, I'm Justin Hitt with Prosperity Homestead over at the demonstration gardens here at Sustainable Homestead Institute. There'll be links in the description where you can come join and find out what's going on. But I want to make sure I'm on track for the resources that you need to grow abundance at your home and to have a fruitful and prosperous homestead.